Have you ever watched something unfold at an airport that made your heart pound and your mind race like a scene ripped straight from a movie screen? Picture this, a quiet teenager in a faded black hoodie, nervously holding his boarding pass, hoping to blend into the crowd. People glance his way, unsure whether to feel threatened or dismiss him entirely. Suddenly, a stern security agent singles him out, suspicion gleaming in every stare. But when the agent uncovers a shocking secret, this teen is worth a fortune. The entire scene flips upside down. Welcome to a tale of prejudice, power, and unexpected payback. Malik Jackson was no stranger to skepticism. From the moment he could walk and talk, life had thrust certain labels upon him. He grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, in a modest home nestled on the outskirts of a busy neighborhood. The smell of fresh peach cobbler and sizzling catfish filled the air every Sunday, while the sound of hip-hop blasted from the speakers of passing cars throughout the week. Despite the lively energy of his surroundings, Malik had always been an introvert, quiet observant, and possessed of a curiosity that often led him into the pages of books or the depths of coding tutorials online. He discovered a knack for technology early on. While his peers were busy playing video games or hanging out, Malik spent his free time tinkering with computers, exploring the ins and outs of programming languages, and challenging himself to build things that could make life easier. By the time he was 13, he had created his first mobile app, a rudimentary note-taking platform with a unique approach to organizing tasks. It wasn't a blockbuster success, but it taught him that he possessed a gift. He saw the world differently, noticing gaps and inefficiencies that most people simply accepted or overlooked. His mother, Tanya, worked long hours at Grady Memorial Hospital as a nurse, while his father, who'd passed away when Malik was younger, had once been a school teacher. Tanya always believed her son would do great things, but even she couldn't have predicted the empire Malik would one day begin to build. He was still just a high school junior, but he'd partnered with mentors and investors from around the world for a new tech startup he called Smart Evo Solutions. On the outside, Malik appeared as a typical lanky teenager with a shy smile and an ever-present hoodie, the kind of uniform worn by many teens. Few people guessed that behind that hoodie and those inquisitive brown eyes lay a mind that could command millions. Yet it was this unassuming air that also made him an easy target for unfair judgments, and soon on a fateful trip from Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, that prejudice would come to a dramatic head. It was 6 a.m. when Malik arrived at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the sprawling gateway to destinations both domestic and international. The enormous concourses seemed to stretch on forever, dotted with bustling travelers, many of them sipping coffee while dragging rolling luggage behind them. Flight announcements echoed overhead, offering a comforting background hum that made Malik's heart flutter with anticipation. He was heading to Los Angeles to attend a prestigious youth entrepreneurship conference sponsored by Microsoft, a real heavyweight in the tech world. Yes, the Microsoft that had been around longer than Malik had been alive. He'd been invited personally by a venture capitalist who had seen promise in Smart Evo Solutions. Although his mother wanted to accompany him, Malik insisted on traveling alone. He'd turned 17 last month and felt the time had come to step out of his comfort zone. Clad in his favorite black hoodie, a pair of well-worn jeans and sneakers scuffed from countless adventures, Malik navigated the throngs of people with surprising ease. He'd traveled before, albeit not extensively, so he knew how to get through check-in and security without causing a scene. Still, he couldn't shake the anxious energy that accompanied his every move. Perhaps it was just the nerves of speaking in front of successful business magnates later that week. Or maybe it was the fact that he'd encountered enough suspicious glares in his life to expect at least one more that day. On his phone, he double-checked his boarding pass and the documentation he had for the conference. His eyes lingered on the email detailing his itinerary business class seat on a Delta Airlines flight to Los Angeles. The seat had been upgraded by the conference organizers, who wanted him to arrive well-rested for their big event. This little detail didn't exactly fit the image most people had of a teen in a hoodie, but Malik looked forward to savoring every moment of the experience. But before he could even reach the plane, his day would take a turn he never expected. Fate, or prejudice, was about to knock him off course. And in doing so, it would set the stage for revelations that no one in that airport, least of all Malik himself, could have anticipated. Malik approached the Delta Airlines check-in counter, scanning the lines to see which one would move fastest. He clutched his sleek black backpack, a protective case for his laptop nestled safely inside. He noticed the quick glance from the desk attendant, a petite woman with a friendly enough smile. She greeted him politely, although her expression betrayed a flicker of surprise when he handed over his itinerary. "Good morning," Malik said quietly, placing his ID and e-ticket confirmation on the counter. "Good morning," the attendant replied, glancing down at his documents. "You're traveling to Los Angeles today, Mr. Jackson?" "Yes," he responded with a small nod. "Business class seat." She looked up, arching an eyebrow ever so slightly. "That's correct," she confirmed, her hands pausing on the keyboard. "Are you traveling alone?" Malik nodded again, aware that he was a minor traveling by himself, which sometimes raised eyebrows. But everything on his reservation had been cleared. The conference organizers had provided all the necessary documentation well in advance, so theoretically there should be no issues. Still, the attendant's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Her demeanor had changed from friendly to cautious in a matter of seconds. As she typed, she cast side glances at Malik. He could almost hear the unspoken questions swirling in her mind. Is this reservation legit? Why is a teenager flying solo in business class? Who paid for this ticket? Despite his anxieties, Malik maintained a calm composure. He'd grown accustomed to these silent judgments. Then, after a pause that felt far too long, the attendant printed his boarding pass and handed it to him. "Here you go, Mr. Jackson," she said, forcing a professional smile. "Gate T7. Boarding begins at 7:20 a.m. Have a pleasant flight." Malik exhaled, relieved the exchange hadn't escalated into anything more. He gave her a polite thank you and walked away. It was a minor incident, but it foreshadowed greater tensions lurking around the corner. In the hustle and bustle of the airport environment, one unassuming glance or passing suspicion can turn into a situation that spirals out of control. Little did Malik know that fate would soon toss him into a spotlight far brighter and more uncomfortable than any stage at that upcoming conference. The TSA security line was winding but orderly, the typical snaking queue where travelers waited to place their belongings on the conveyor belt. Malik silently rehearsed the steps he always took. Shoes off, laptop out of the bag. Hoodie unzipped, nothing in his pockets. He double-checked everything before stepping up to the security officer, who checked boarding passes against IDs. That's when he noticed the scrutiny in the officer's eyes. "Boarding pass," the officer said, extending a hand without looking directly at Malik. The officer's gaze finally shifted to Malik's face as he studied the ID. "Malik Jackson," he read aloud. Then his eyes flicked to the business class notation on the boarding pass. "Traveling to Los Angeles." "Yes, sir." Malik answered softly, trying to maintain eye contact without appearing confrontational. The hum of the airport around them somehow amplified the tension of this brief interaction. Purpose of the trip, the officer asked, which wasn't a standard TSA question, but more of a personal curiosity. Still, Malik calmly answered. Attending a conference, Malik said. I'm representing my startup at an entrepreneurship event. The officer's eyebrows lifted, skepticism flashing across his expression. Entrepreneurship, huh? At your age? Malik offered a neutral nod. He'd learned from experience that being polite and concise usually helped avoid trouble. Yes, sir. A moment passed, an awkward silence in a line that was supposed to be moving efficiently. Travelers behind him started fidgeting, shifting their weight from foot to foot, glancing at their watches. The officer seemed to sense their impatience and finally motioned Malik forward. Go ahead, he said, but not before giving Malik one last lingering look. It was the look of someone who either didn't believe Malik's story or suspected there was more to it than met the eye. That passing hint of doubt clung to the air like a faint odor that wouldn't dissipate. Malik headed to the conveyor belt, feeling the weight of that scrutiny. Stay calm, he told himself quietly, setting his backpack in a bin and slipping off his sneakers. He reminded himself that soon enough he'd be on the plane, able to relax. At least that was the hope. In truth, the most unsettling part of his journey still lay ahead, just beyond those metal detectors waiting to unfold in a manner that would leave everyone stunned. Malik stepped through the metal detector heart, thumping in tandem with the beep of the machine. He'd prepared for the usual routine. Sometimes he was randomly selected for additional screening. Other times he sailed right through. But today, as soon as he crossed the threshold, a gruff voice called out. Sir, step to the side. He glanced up to see a broad-shouldered TSA agent, Officer Grady, motioning him into a roped-off area. The agent had cold, appraising eyes that made Malik's stomach twist. Malik complied, trying not to panic. There was nothing illegal on him, obviously. He had complied with every rule: no liquids over 3 ounces, no metal objects, laptop in a separate bin. Still, his palms felt clammy. As other passengers collected their belongings, Malik watched them cast puzzled glances at him. Some wore empathy on their faces. Others looked relieved it wasn't them. The hush in that corner of the security checkpoint seemed suffocating. Officer Grady approached with the air of someone who'd decided a suspect was guilty before the trial even began. "Spread your arms," he ordered. Malik did as asked. The agent ran a handheld scanner over him, the device chirping occasionally, but not finding anything suspicious. "Empty your pockets," Grady said next. "I have nothing in them, sir," Malik replied softly. Grady's eyes narrowed. "Do it anyway." Slowly, Malik turned his pockets inside out, revealing a single piece of crumpled paper, a receipt from a nearby bookstore where he'd purchased a new novel the previous day. The agent peered at it, almost disappointed. Then Grady leaned in closer. "Where are you headed, Los Angeles?" "For a business conference," Malik said, repeating the explanation he'd given earlier. Officer Grady seemed unconvinced. "Business conference," he echoed, voice brimming with doubt. "At your age," Malik swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." There was a tense beat of silence as Grady stared at him, trying to detect any trace of dishonesty. Malik's pulse raced, but he kept his gaze steady. In that moment, it felt like the entire airport had paused to watch. He couldn't shake the feeling that a single wrong word or gesture would spark a confrontation. Little did Malik know, the real confrontation was just about to begin, one that would reveal truths neither he nor Officer Grady could have foreseen. As Officer Grady continued to scrutinize Malik, more TSA personnel ambled closer, their curiosity piqued by the commotion. A few travelers waiting for their own bags to clear the X-ray machine craned their necks, eager for a glimpse at what was happening. In the background, the conveyor belt whirred mechanically, sending plastic bins sliding down the line. Grady pulled up a handheld device to scan Malik's boarding pass, once more cross-checking it with the TSA system. "Malik Jackson," he mumbled, reading the information on screen. A few moments later, confusion rippled across his face. He tapped the screen as though it might be malfunctioning. Then he looked up at Malik. "You got some kind of special VIP pass?" Grady asked suspiciously. "Why is your profile popping up like this?" Malik's breath caught in his throat. He realized that the conference organizers, in an effort to streamline his travel, had likely linked his frequent flyer number to his profile one that was upgraded to special status due to the traveling he'd done in short bursts for product demos. On top of that, the backing from certain high-profile investors had given him an unexpected level of access to certain lounge and airline benefits. "I'm not sure exactly," Malik stammered, shifting uneasily. "I fly for business, I guess." "Maybe they—" But Grady's expression had changed again. This time, it bordered on disbelief. He lowered the device and stared at Malik, as if seeing him for the first time. The teen in the hoodie, the very picture of a typical American high school student, was flagged in some sort of upper-tier traveler bracket that usually catered to wealthy executives or celebrities. "Are you telling me you've got that kind of money?" Grady asked, voice trembling with either shock or indignation. "Why is your name linked to multiple corporate accounts, stocks, investments?" A murmur rose from the onlookers as a hush fell over the immediate vicinity. For a moment, Malik felt his heart pound in his ears. He knew he had a decent net worth on paper, at least due to the valuation of his startup. But hearing this uniformed stranger speak of it out loud in such a confrontational manner made it feel surreal. 1,000 thoughts and emotions swirled in Malik's mind. But one question stood out. Would this revelation free him from scrutiny, or worsen it? The air thickened with tension, as though the entire terminal were collectively holding its breath to see what happened next. 2 years earlier, Malik's father's old laptop had become his gateway into the vast world of coding and entrepreneurship. At first, he found it a thrilling challenge, writing scripts, building websites, learning to debug. He'd create small projects, like an online study group platform, for his school, testing his abilities on teachers and classmates alike. The feedback he received was glowing, and his curiosity only grew. Soon he was devouring every tutorial he could find, from Python to JavaScript, teaching himself the intricacies of cloud computing and data analytics. It was a hackathon competition at a local community center that served as his first big break. Malik entered with a prototype for an AI-based scheduling assistant that integrated seamlessly with popular calendar apps. Among dozens of entries from college students, local software geeks, and even professional coders, Malik's stood out for its innovation and simplicity. Judges from a mid-level tech accelerator took note, and in a leap of faith, they offered him a small seed investment to continue developing his idea. Word spread like wildfire among investor circles. Here was a bright young mind from Atlanta, with no formal training, creating solutions that rivaled major tech firms. Malik named his fledgling company Smart Evo Solutions. Investors from both coasts began emailing him one after another, vying for a piece of the action. By the time he was 16, Malik had a dedicated team of developers working remotely, all funded by venture capital. The initial seed money ballooned into a multi-million-dollar valuation for Smart Evo solutions. Although Malik's actual liquid assets were more modest, he was underage after all, and legally much of his business activity was handled through guardians. His paper net worth, tied to the company's valuation, soared into the low 8 figures. For anyone who bothered to research Malik Jackson's name, lit up articles on TechCrunch, Forbes, and other reputable tech publications, each heralding him as part of a new generation of entrepreneurial prodigies. However, outside of the tech bubble, no one recognized him on the street. He looked like any other kid. He wore hoodies to feel comfortable, not to hide anything. But the world, Malik soon learned, had certain preconceived notions. If he didn't match the typical image of a wealthy traveler, it often led to uncomfortable confrontations. And now, on a crisp morning in the world's busiest airport, those biases were colliding head-on with the truth of who he really was. Even as Malik faced the harsh glare of Officer Grady, his mind flickered back to a conversation he'd had just a few weeks prior. At a local charity event in Atlanta, he had quietly pledged to donate a portion of Smart Evo's future revenue to support STEM programs for underprivileged youth kids who reminded him of himself at a younger age. His mother had always told him, "Your success means nothing if you don't help lift others up along the way." She had been right. And maybe that's why, in the midst of this airport drama, Malik couldn't help but notice other travelers around him who seemed distressed. A family nearby was frantically emptying their suitcases to meet the weight requirement for luggage eyes full of worry and embarrassment. A young mother clutched her toddler's hand while juggling passports, boarding passes, and a diaper bag far heavier than it should be. That was how Malik's mind worked. He saw problems and solutions. How could technology streamline the baggage check process so families wouldn't be stuck rearranging items on the floor? How could parents traveling alone access quick assistance to lighten the load? As Grady tapped away at his device, still verifying Malik's details. For the third time, Malik caught himself wishing he could do more than stand there as a powerless bystander. One day, he thought Smart Evo can tackle bigger things. Airport management apps, AI-driven personal assistants. Who knows? But first, he had to make it through this moment. Tapping into that sense of empathy, Malik tried to stay calm. The last thing he wanted was to create a spectacle or draw attention to himself. Yet attention had already found him, and ignoring it wouldn't make it go away. His philanthropic dreams and the empathy in his heart seemed a universe away from the immediate problem, proving he wasn't some sort of con artist or security threat. Officer Grady's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "Kid, I gotta call my supervisor. Wait here." The words might as well have been an alarm, signaling more trouble to come. As Grady stepped away to make his call, Malik noticed a few passengers lingering nearby. Some looked on with pity, others with idle curiosity. But one woman, a tall traveler with neat braids and an air of confidence, broke the invisible barrier separating bystanders from the drama. She approached cautiously, her carry-on trailing behind her. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked in a gentle tone. Malik shrugged, managing a tight smile. "I'm fine," he said. "Just a little annoyed." She nodded, understanding flickering in her eyes. "I saw they pulled you aside. Looked like some extra scrutiny." She extended her hand. "My name's Carmen. Are you traveling alone?" Malik shook her hand, grateful for the kindness. "Yeah, I'm headed to LA for a conference," he said, offering a quick explanation. He left out the details about his startup and net worth, partly because he didn't want to sound boastful, and partly because he'd had enough confrontation for one morning. Carmen frowned. "They shouldn't be giving you a hard time if you haven't done anything. Where I'm from, We see that kind of profiling all the time, and it doesn't ever sit right with me. Malik appreciated her support. The presence of someone who believed his innocence even without full context was comforting. In that moment, Carmen was joined by an older gentleman in a crisp business suit who also chimed in. "Son, do you need assistance?" he asked, glancing at the TSA area. "Sometimes having another pair of eyes or a witness can help." "I think I'm okay," Malik replied, though his voice trembled slightly. "Thanks for asking, though. It means a lot." The older man smiled kindly. "Hang in there. If you need anything, let us know. I'm a lawyer, so I'm used to stepping in when things look questionable." With that, Malik felt a subtle wave of relief. He wasn't facing this ordeal alone anymore. Two strangers, Carmen and the lawyer, were willing to stand up for him if needed, and their empathy would soon prove invaluable as the situation escalated in ways none of them could foresee. Officer Grady returned with a supervisor in tow, a tall, stern-faced woman named Ms. Cartwright. She wore a blazer over her TSA uniform, and the official badge pinned to her lapel gleamed under the fluorescent airport lights. One look at her tight-lipped expression told Malik that this was no mere random check. "Let me see his ID and boarding pass," Ms. Cartwright said in a tone that commanded compliance. She reviewed the documents, then looked at Malik as though weighing him on invisible scales. "What's the issue here?" she asked Grady, frowning slightly as she tapped a pen against her clipboard. Grady shifted uncomfortably. The system flagged a high-value traveler profile. Kids like him don't usually. Ms. Cartwright cut him off with a single raised hand. She scanned the barcode on Malik's boarding pass with her own device, scrolled through some data, then handed it back to Grady. "He's not on any watch list. There's no immediate cause for concern." Her words should have settled the matter, but the tension remained thick. Carmen, standing behind the roped barrier, cleared her throat. "Excuse me. Can we let him go? He has a flight to catch." Ms. Cartwright turned to Carmen, eyes flaring slightly. "Ma'am, I need you to stand back. We're conducting official business." Carmen shrugged but complied. The older lawyer quietly took note of Ms. Cartwright's name and position. Malik could sense the tension building, as if every move he made could either diffuse or ignite another wave of suspicion. Finally, Ms. Cartwright sighed. "Young man, we need to verify a few things. Mind explaining your trip details one more time?" Malik swallowed. "I'm traveling to Los Angeles for a youth entrepreneurship conference sponsored by Microsoft," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I have documents here, if you need them." He pulled a folder from his backpack containing the conference invitation and agenda. Ms. Cartwright accepted the folder and skimmed the top page. Her expression shifted from skepticism to mild surprise. "You're a presenter?" "Yes, ma'am," Malik responded. "My startup was funded by a couple of venture capitalists. Microsoft invited me to speak." For a moment, Ms. Cartwright simply stared at him, as if searching for any cracks in his story. Finally, she turned to Grady. "Give him back his documents. Let's wrap this up." A wave of relief washed over Malik's entire body. The worst he hoped was behind him. Little did he know the drama was about to escalate yet again, leaving behind consequences that would ripple far beyond the airport's security checkpoint. Cartwright handed Malik's documents back. Officer Grady muttered something under his breath. Malik couldn't catch every word, but phrases like "still suspicious" and "kids these days" drifted over. It sent a jolt of anxiety through him. The man's hostility was palpable. Ms. Cartwright seemed to sense the tension too. She snapped her clipboard against her palm and gave Grady a tight-lipped glare. "Is there a problem?" "Officer?" she asked, her tone implying that she expected no further complications. Grady looked away, a muscle in his jaw twitching. "No, ma'am," he finally replied, though his voice was tinged with defiance. Sensing that they might release him, Malik gathered his belongings, a sense of lightness filling his chest. Carmen shot him a supportive thumbs up from behind the ropes. The older lawyer gave him an encouraging nod. For a heartbeat, it seemed the ordeal might finally be over. Then, just as Malik prepared to slip away, Grady couldn't resist a final jab. "Enjoy your flight, Mr. Moneybags," he said with a sneer loud enough for others to hear. A few heads turned, some eyes widened, and Malik felt the heat of embarrassment creep up his neck. He bit his lip, willed himself not to respond. But the comment ignited something in the gathered crowd, a mixture of shock and disapproval. Ms. Cartwright's face hardened. She looked as though she wanted to scold Grady, but the eyes of half the terminal were upon them, and any confrontation now would only draw more attention. But as far as Malik was concerned, the damage was done. This uniformed officer had outed him publicly, if not specifically detailing his net worth, then at least strongly implying that he was extraordinarily wealthy. Malik wished he could vanish or at least slip into anonymity once more. Instead, he found himself the subject of whispers and stares. They let him go, and he clutched his backpack with unsteady hands, pushing past the rope barrier. Yet the sense of injustice lingered, a knot tightening in his stomach. The unspoken question simmered. Could the day get any worse? Unfortunately, fate wasn't quite done with its meddling. Karma had yet to fully come around, and its eventual arrival would be nothing short of spectacular. Just as Malik moved away from the security area, a woman with a smartphone stepped into his path. She looked vaguely familiar, perhaps someone he'd seen in passing near the checkpoint. Her phone was pointed at him, camera lens capturing every nuance of his expression. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't mean to intrude, but I recorded what happened back there. That officer was out of line. Would you mind telling me what just happened from your perspective?" Malik's heart hammered. He glanced around, noticing a small crowd forming. I really would prefer not to," he muttered, eyes darting anxiously. He didn't want to stir more trouble. At the same time, he recognized that footage of Grady's behavior, especially his disparaging remark, might protect him from further harassment, or at the very least, force accountability. The woman nodded, lowering her phone a fraction. "I understand," she said gently. "It's just that, well, I'm a freelance journalist, and I think it's important people know about situations like this. I can blur your face and keep your name confidential if you want." Behind her, other travelers murmured in agreement. Some recognized the potential newsworthiness of the clip. Others simply seemed outraged at the discrimination they'd witnessed. Malik glanced over to see Carmen and the older lawyer approach. Carmen placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. The lawyer cleared his throat and spoke up. "If you're uncomfortable, you don't have to give a statement," he advised. "But if you do, it might shed light on a problem many people face. I'd be happy to advise you on your rights." Malik paused, torn between a desire to move on and a sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all the people who'd experienced similar profiling but never had the chance to speak. Slowly, he nodded. "All right," he said. "But please don't use my full name or show my face." The woman quickly agreed, and Carmen offered to stand by him, giving moral support. Little did Malik know that by the time his flight landed in Los Angeles, This video would spread across social media like wildfire, thrusting him into a spotlight he never wanted, but perhaps needed to face for the sake of broader change. By the time Malik made it to the gate, his nerves were frayed. The TSA episode had eaten into his cushion of time, leaving him barely a few minutes before boarding. Panting slightly, he scanned his boarding pass at gate T7 and stepped into the final waiting area. His phone buzzed incessantly in his pocket, notifications piling up from friends who'd seen the video on social media or had heard about the incident through the airport grapevine. Just as he found a seat in the crowded area, a Delta Airlines gate agent approached wearing a polite but tense expression. Mr. Jackson Malik looked up, surprised that she already knew his name. The agent clasped her hands. "I'm Kendra, one of the supervisors here at Delta. We heard about what happened at security. On behalf of Delta, I want to extend our sincerest apologies for any inconvenience or distress you experienced." Malik blinked, unsure how to respond. That's okay," he mumbled, though he knew it wasn't entirely okay. Kendra's gaze was sympathetic. "I'd like to personally escort you onto the aircraft. Also, please feel free to use the Delta Sky Club lounge if you need a moment of calm before you board," she offered, pointing down the corridor to an exclusive lounge entrance. "We want to ensure your comfort." For a moment, Malik contemplated the offer. He was tired, upset, and craving a moment of peace. Yet the lounge was on the other side of the concourse, and boarding would start soon. "Thanks," he said politely, "but I'll just wait here. I don't want to risk missing my flight." Kendra nodded. "Understood. If you need anything at all, please let me know." She handed him a card with a direct contact number for Delta's customer care. Then she left to manage other passengers. Malik exhaled, leaning back in his seat. At least someone recognized the injustice, yet an apology couldn't erase the humiliation or the uneasy feeling that lingered. The real question running through his mind was whether Officer Grady or the TSA as a whole would face any consequences for the ordeal. Unbeknownst to Malik, that question was already in the process of being answered thanks to the viral spread of the video he hadn't even seen yet. Boarding began, and Malik joined the short line for business class passengers. As he walked down the jet bridge, the hush of the airplane interior wrapped him in a slightly more reassuring atmosphere. The flight attendants greeted him with polite nods. Once seated, Malik placed his backpack under the seat in front of him and finally took a moment to breathe. He stared out the window at the busy tarmac where ground crew loaded baggage and guided planes. The hustle outside contrasted sharply with the plush comfort inside the cabin. A flight attendant named Janelle approached with a friendly smile. "Welcome aboard," she said, offering him a choice of orange juice or sparkling water. Malik opted for water, his throat dry from the morning's stress. He sipped slowly, letting the cool liquid soothe him. The plane began to fill with other travelers, mostly business professionals, scrolling through emails or flipping through in-flight magazines. Occasionally, someone would glance at Malik, perhaps curious about the teen alone in business class. But it didn't bother him as much now. He was mentally drained thoughts, swirling around the security fiasco and how it might affect his future. Shortly before takeoff, Carmen walked by on her way to her economy seat in the back. She saw Malik, gave him a quick wave, and whispered, "Everything okay?" Malik nodded, mouthing a thank you for her earlier support. In those few seconds, he felt a quiet sense of gratitude and camaraderie. Not everyone in the world was quick to judge. As the safety demonstration started and the engines revved up, Malik put on his noise-cancelling headphones. He tried to focus on the conference ahead, the speech he had to deliver the potential investors he might meet, and the possibility of forging new partnerships. Yet the memory of Officer Grady's sneer and the weight of the phone recording wouldn't leave his mind. He hoped that once he landed, the day's troubles would finally be behind him. But destiny had more cards to play, and the next round of revelations would unfold the moment the wheels touched the runway at LAX. The sun was just creeping over the horizon when the plane touched down at Los Angeles International Airport, LAX. Malik looked out at the palm trees dotting the landscape, their silhouettes dancing in the early morning light. The seatbelt sign turned off with a ding, and passengers stood to retrieve their carry-ons. Malik waited patiently, still lost in thought about his upcoming conference and how the rest of the day might unravel. As he stepped into the terminal, a flood of notifications exploded on his phone. Text messages from friends, missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize, and a barrage of social media tags. Confusion knitted his brows. Normally, he'd get a few pings from his development team, or maybe a notification from the conference organizers. But this was on another level entirely. He ducked into a quiet corner near a set of large windows overlooking the runway. Taking a deep breath, he unlocked his phone. The first message he opened was from his best friend, Devon Dude. You went viral. The video of that TSA guy humiliating you is blowing up. Are you okay? Malik's stomach twisted. He scrolled through countless messages, each echoing the same sentiment. Some included links to news sites. One link led to a short article on a local Atlanta outlet describing the incident at the airport. It had enough details, though it referred to Malik only as the teen in the hoodie, to spark outrage online. Another link pointed to a Twitter post that was rapidly amassing likes, retweets, and comments. His heart pounded as he realized the gravity of what was happening. This wasn't just a few people witnessing an act of discrimination. It was thousands, maybe even millions of strangers who now knew about it. With trembling fingers, he put the phone away, not quite ready to face the digital storm. Stay focused, he told himself. He still had a conference to attend. The official driver from Microsoft's Youth Entrepreneurship program was already texting, waiting outside the terminal. Malik hoisted his backpack, took one last look at the phone, blowing up with notifications, and decided to walk forward. He hoped that all this viral attention might push for accountability, but at the same time, he feared the negativity that often came with internet fame. The next few steps he took out of the terminal and into LA's fresh air felt heavy with possibilities both good and bad. Malik slid into the back of a sleek black sedan, courtesy of Microsoft's travel arrangements. The driver, a friendly man named Victor, glanced at Malik through the rearview mirror. "Eventful flight?" he asked, noticing the teen's preoccupied expression. "You have no idea," Malik replied with a weary grin. The car zipped along the highway toward downtown Los Angeles palm trees lining the boulevard. Billboards advertising upcoming movie releases and concerts flashed by. Malik tried to clear his head, focusing instead on his presentation at the entrepreneurship conference. But the phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Eventually, he decided to power it off, determined to reclaim some peace. They arrived at a chic hotel where the conference attendees were booked. The lobby was a whirlwind of activity, young innovators exchanging ideas, corporate sponsors setting up booths, and event coordinators directing foot traffic. Malik navigated the crowd to the registration desk. A staff member recognized him and lit up with excitement. "Malik Jackson. We're so glad you could make it," she said, handing him a lanyard with his name. The text guest speaker shimmered in bold letters. "Your panel is tomorrow at 10 a.m. We've scheduled a tech demo area for you later in the afternoon as well." Malik nodded in thanks. "That's great. Looking forward to it." But even in this buzzing environment, whispers floated around him like phantoms. He caught snatches of conversation, viral video, airport discrimination, that teen founder. It seemed word of his ordeal had reached the conference attendees too. Some approached him with concern, asking if he needed anything. Others seemed more fascinated, eager to attach themselves to the trending story. Malik smiled politely, feeling torn. He appreciated the support, but hated the spotlight for the wrong reasons. What he couldn't escape was the sense that this incident was no longer just about him. It was about the broader issues of racial profiling and the stereotypes attached to success. Unbeknownst to him, a flurry of media requests was about to descend, and among them would be voices calling for accountability, for changes in TSA procedures, and even for Officer Grady to face the consequences of his actions back in Atlanta. Later that afternoon, Malik set up a simple demonstration booth in one corner of the conference venue. Posters displayed Smart Evo Solutions' latest app developments, AI-driven scheduling workflow optimization, and future expansions into logistics. He was explaining the technology to a small group when a pair of corporate representatives from Microsoft approached, politely waiting for him to finish his presentation. One introduced herself as Linda Zhao, a senior program manager who oversaw the youth entrepreneurship initiatives. The other was Mark DeLeon, a spokesperson for Microsoft's diversity and inclusion efforts. After Malik wrapped up his explanation for the group, Linda stepped forward. "Malik, we've been hearing about what happened at the airport," she said, concern evident on her face. "We just wanted to check in on you, see if you're all right." Malik managed a grateful smile. "I'm okay, thank you. Just a bit overwhelmed by the attention." Mark nodded, his tone empathetic. "If there's anything we can do, let us know. Microsoft takes these issues very seriously. We have resources to help with legal advice, media management, whatever you might need in the wake of all this." The offer caught Malik off guard. He hadn't expected a giant like Microsoft to take a personal interest in his ordeal. Part of him wondered if it was purely PR-driven, but the kindness in Linda's and Mark's eyes suggested otherwise. "That's incredibly kind," Malik said, exhaling tension he hadn't realized he was holding. "I might need some advice on how to handle the media requests. I've been getting bombarded, and I don't want this overshadowing the conference or the tech I'm working on." Linda exchanged a knowing look with Mark. "We can definitely help with that," she replied. "As for overshadowing, sometimes these situations can shine a spotlight on broader issues that need addressing. Maybe we can find a positive angle, something that emphasizes how tech companies like yours and ours can shape social change." Malik's eyes flickered with a hint of hope. It was the first time since that harrowing morning at Hartsfield-Jackson that he felt a sense of real possibility emerging from the chaos. With Microsoft backing him and a supportive network of entrepreneurs rallying to his side, perhaps the negative experience at the airport could become a catalyst for something greater. The seeds of transformation were sown, and soon enough they would bear fruit, especially once certain powers that be took notice of the viral uproar ignited by Malik's story. Meanwhile, back in Atlanta, the video of Malik's ordeal continued to circulate. Local news stations picked it up, airing snippets of Officer Grady's sharp comments and Malik's calm demeanor. Activists on Twitter demanded an official response from the TSA. Even some high-profile celebrities joined the conversation, condemning the profiling and using hashtags like #flying-while-black and #techprodigy. Inside the TSA administration offices, pressure mounted. Public relations teams scrambled to contain the fallout, issuing carefully worded statements about their commitment to fairness and impartiality. It didn't help that the clip showcased a clear example of bias Officer Grady singling out Malik, insinuating he was suspicious solely because of his hoodie and age, then sarcastically referring to him as Mr. Moneybags. Investigations were launched. Officer Grady was called in for a series of meetings with superiors who demanded an explanation. Grady insisted he was just following procedure, but the recorded comments and the subsequent refusal to let Malik pass quickly told a different story. As public outrage grew, TSA higher-ups realized they couldn't simply brush this under the rug. Ms. Cartwright, the supervisor who had intervened, was also interviewed. She recounted how Grady seemed unwilling to accept that Malik's travel credentials were legitimate, despite official verification. The final blow came when a civil rights organization threatened to file a formal complaint against the TSA for negligence and discrimination, using Malik's case as a prime example. In the face of mounting evidence and public condemnation, the administration had to make a decision. Within a week of the incident, Officer Grady was placed on indefinite suspension. Internal memos circulated, citing a breach of conduct and unprofessional behavior. Word reached Malik through various media outlets that the agent responsible for his ordeal was now facing the consequences. Though Malik had never wished ill upon anyone, a sense of relief washed over him. Accountability had finally arrived. Hard karma, it seemed, had a way of coming full circle. Back in Los Angeles, the entrepreneurship conference was in full swing. Malik's speech became one of the most talked about sessions, not just because of his age or the viral video, but because he spoke with genuine passion about his vision for inclusive innovation. He argued that technology should serve everyone, not merely those with privilege or easy access. We have to create solutions that address real problems across all communities. Malik said from the podium, his voice carrying the conviction of someone who had seen firsthand the barriers that society could impose. Whether it's healthcare, education, or everyday tasks, our apps and platforms should be built with the idea of leveling the playing field. His words resonated strongly, drawing applause from the audience. And it wasn't just applause. A line of potential investors and collaborators formed afterward, eager to partner with Smart Evo Solutions. Malik found himself juggling more opportunities than he'd imagined possible. Invitations to speak at universities, to consult on new tech projects, and even to appear on national talk shows flooded his inbox. Despite the whirlwind, Malik stayed grounded. Late one evening in his hotel room, he video called his mom, Tanya. "I'm proud of you," she said, smiling through the screen. "I wish your father could see you now." Malik blinked back tears. "He'd probably give me that same lecture about staying humble," he joked, a hint of nostalgia coloring his tone. They spoke about his plans for the future. Expanding Smart Evo Solutions, investing in community-based programs, and possibly establishing a scholarship fund for young minority coders. The idea of turning adversity into a source of empowerment drove him forward. Before ending the call, Tanya reminded him, "Remember why you do this, Malik. It's not about proving anyone wrong. It's about making the world a better place bit by bit." Malik nodded, taking those words to heart. He also knew he couldn't shy away from the platform he now had. If the world wanted to hear his story, perhaps he could channel that attention into something meaningful, and maybe, just maybe, prevent another teenager in a hoodie from ever being subjected to the same humiliating treatment. 3 weeks later, Malik sat on a rooftop lounge in downtown Atlanta, the skyline glittering under a warm, star-filled sky. He was back home, his life changed in ways he was still processing. Smart Evo Solutions was on track for a new funding round. Microsoft had offered deeper collaboration opportunities, and a host of other tech giants were knocking on his door. Yet what truly warmed his heart was the outpouring of support he'd received from everyday people, those who saw his ordeal not as a rare occurrence, but as a symbol of a much larger systemic issue. Officer Grady's suspension had been widely covered in the news, and interviews with travel security experts sparked conversations on how to reduce bias in airport screenings. Some called for mandatory cultural sensitivity training, while others proposed advanced AI scanning systems to remove human prejudices from the equation. Malik, ever the innovator, began privately brainstorming with his mentors on whether Smart Evo could contribute a technology-based solution to mitigate discriminatory practices. He also received a heartfelt note of apology from Ms. Cartwright, who admitted that she hadn't done more to curtail Grady's behavior at the time. She pledged to advocate for change within the TSA, hoping that Malik's experience would be the catalyst for reforms. Carmen, the kind traveler who stood up for him, had connected with him on social media. They exchanged messages occasionally with Carmen, sending him inspiring quotes and updates on her own life. Sipping a chilled glass of sweet tea, Malik reflected on the strange, unsettling journey. There had been fear, embarrassment, and anger, but also kindness, empathy, and a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that adversity often precedes growth, and in facing discrimination, he'd discovered allies he never knew he had. More importantly, he'd found a platform to advocate for fairness and inclusion in an industry and a world that desperately needed it. His final thought before closing his laptop that night was simple yet profound. Sometimes life forces you into the spotlight for reasons you never chose. The challenge is deciding what to do once you're there, whether to let that moment define you or to use it to redefine the world around you. Thank you for journeying through Malik's story, a compelling reminder that prejudice can lurk in the most ordinary places, and justice sometimes arrives in the most dramatic ways. From a tense airport confrontation to the rapid rise of a viral video, Malik's experience highlights how any one of us could be thrust into a spotlight we never asked for. Yet in the face of adversity, alliances can form, empathy can blossom, and change can ignite. If Malik's story moved you, consider sharing this video to spark conversations about fairness, respect, and empowerment. Hit the like button if you believe in using our platforms, whether big or small, to stand up against discrimination. And of course, subscribe for more captivating stories that shed light on the human experiences we all share. Together we can help ensure the world sees beyond the hoodie and recognizes the brilliance beneath. Remember, compassion and innovation can conquer any bias. Share the message.